Hello everyone, I'm taking a look at Phantasy Star Online episodes 1 and 2 for the GameCube. This was a game that I have seen countless times reblogged in gift sets for the environments, mainly because it seems like the water, the lights, they work at a higher frame rate than the rest of the environment, and it always seen as super aesthetic. And it's a very interesting game because this was essentially designed as a console-based MMO, which is really interesting, and it had this whole sort of connection online feature. The GameCube does have an adapter for it, but obviously the servers are long gone. But of course, this was really a Dreamcast game. The Dreamcast was one of the first internet-enabled consoles, and so this was designed with the Dreamcast in mind, and a lot of failed, or, well, when the Dreamcast and Sega went out of business, a lot of them were ported over to the GameCube so they could at least kind of survive and people could still play these games. So for Phantasy Star Online, it's a weird game where it's very aesthetic, it's very cool looking, it's a very video gamey game in an archetypical sense. But what's really interesting about it is I have a conflict about it, where it is very nice with the atmospheres, and the music can get a little bit grating sometimes, but the game itself is almost too simple. For example, if you've played Lego Star Wars, you've basically played this game where every character has a 3-style attack where you basically press A, thrice. And if you time it exactly as the last attack ends, it'll lead into a chain attack. But it only has a max combo of 3 at a time. It's also interesting to see things also just in the menu where they can have downloaded quests and downloaded content, available. But of course, you can't connect to the internet, so it doesn't exist. But the idea is that this would be a base play, that perhaps later they would have more than a 3-attack combo. You would level up and perhaps download some kind of cool thing that allows you to do 4 combos or special abilities, of which there are some. Also, when you start the game, there are technically 9, or actually there's 12 different types of play styles, but really 3 different classes, which are your sword, user, your ranger, and your caster or support unit. And so each one of these characters has a different strength, and despite that, though, certain characters can still use some of the other weapons. So you can use the lower level handguns if you specialize as a sword user, for example. And yeah, basically everything still works on the 3-hit combo. There are subclass variations where if you choose an android rather than a human, then you get certain perks like being able to see traps, never getting poisoned. You never have to use, or you can't use techniques, but you use traps instead. And techniques are kind of, special ranged abilities or special different attacks like fire and ice and stuff like that. While the traps, you deploy them and they're fire and ice attacks, but you have to shoot it in order to trigger it. I personally found the most broken build in the game, and I still have a save file from many years ago when I first played this, was a ranged android. Because the amount of range you have to hit enemies in this map is just ridiculous, and really having a short range attack only really comes in handy when you're doing bosses and you have to do massive damage to one singular target. But 90% of this game is a bunch of mobs and otherwise smaller enemies. So along with the ability to never get poisoned, so you never have to carry antidotes, you don't have to carry trap vision items because you can see all the traps immediately and never take extra damage. And with the fact that you actually don't have to hold on to any technique healing items, so you have more inventory space, so you don't have to be as TP as how you heal your technique power. It's the most broken class. Like, I started a new file as a normal human sword user, and immediately the difference was stark, where I was constantly getting hit because most of the enemies also are close range enemies. So like more than half the conflicts you're going to get into are completely dispensed with, and if you get into a short range fight as a ranged user, you're still doing more or less the same damage. You're doing the same amount of proximity damage to yourself. So there's no real benefit to not doing that. So I was just playing it and I realized, wow, this is absolutely ridiculously broken playing as this class, and a lot of fun. Not to mention there's certain boxes you have to hit, and having a ranged user, you can just hit them from all far away. It still is a 3-hit combo, but having not to run over there is just, it feels really good. So yeah, that's kind of the unofficial way to play this game. I'm not really one to recommend certain play styles to certain people, but that kind of unironically is playing the game on easy mode. It's such a big difference. But yeah. The maps also in PSO are very, very, I don't want to say generic, but very simple. You know, you have doors, switches, boxes with items in it, pickups. You have your currency, which is Mesta. You have other items you pick up from every enemy, which might be a different sword, different gun, a different body part, a frame for defense, a shield barrier, etc. Certain items that will upgrade the attack of your weapons. And it's very rare to get a more powerful item, so once you do have a powerful item, you can kind of grind that one out and kind of upgrade it with, I think they're called actually like grinders and dio grinders or whatever, to make like a +1 to the attack power. And those small incremental changes have a big difference. Also, at a certain point, I just was playing through this, I found it, I kind of peaked my EXP, even on the hardest areas and levels. All the EXP I was getting, if I did the entire level, I might get half, for it to get to level 18 to 19. So there is definitely a very kind of hard cap when you stop getting more attack power, and you have to start speccing into doing your items and equipment and increasing attack power that way. So yeah, there's a good deal of kind of random chance in this game. There's a good deal of variables and other things. I forgot the really cool thing about this is that despite it being a online no longer possible, this does have local player co-op split screen up to, I think, 4 players. I definitely did it with 2, but I think it was possible with 4. And that was actually surprising, a lot of fun. When you have someone else in the game with you and you're both making progress, it feels really, really good. Again, one major complaint about this game that really I have to get out there is that the maps, even all the special quests and whatever, they repeat the exact same map. It's very tedious. They have like maybe one NPC to like make it feel a little bit different, but for the most part, you are just replaying the same map over and over and over again. And that's kind of is what it is designed to be. It's an MMO, right? So it's supposed to just, rehash the same thing. There's so little difference. It does feel a little bit like a chore. And the fact that you're doing the same 3-hit combo over and over again, again, there is some variety. Like you can do a heavy attack, which is a normal attack, but it just takes a little bit longer to charge up. And, you kind of switch to that almost exclusively as you go through the game because the enemies will get harder. It's a very tedious experience overall, but you do kind of get into that MMO grind of, oh, cool, I'm just always getting better. So that kind of effect does kind of take place where, yeah, I'm not really enjoying this, but I'm getting slightly better everything, every level. I'm leveling up, I'm going further, etc. And overall, it's just, I don't know, it's just a fun, nice experience. And yeah, you get kind of used to the grind, I guess, in a weird, sick, demented way, I suppose. In terms of story, PSO is really, it doesn't matter. There was a space colony on this new planet called Pioneer 1. Pioneer 2 arrives something like 70 years later, and as they're about to land, Pioneer 1 blows up, and you have to investigate what happened and find this missing person. And because it is designed like an MMO, episode 1 and episode 2 are kind of like expansions. So episode 1, you kind of have the same space port. You have the same kind of map you keep going back to, which is Forest 1, Forest 2, and occasionally the boss room, where you fight a giant dragon. So there's one boss per expansion, basically. So it's very, very small in scope and very manageable, I guess. Something that people really praise for, though, is the music and the aesthetics. All the classes look really cool. The load screens are very slick. The environments you go into look really nice, very futuristic. Everything moves at a very high FPS. It feels very futuristic and very cool. It's very, straight line Japanese sci-fi. It feels really good to be in the environments. The music, the main theme, and the kind of world theme, the loading areas feel very futuristic. They feel very cool. One issue, I guess, is that you could be enjoying the main area music down on the planet, and then suddenly it's interrupted by the enemy music, which is kind of aggravating. And when you kind of get into that loop, it does get pretty frustrating a lot of the time. Another issue that I had was inventory management. I'd have a bunch of stuff, and I find my strategy was you use a teleporter. I forget what it's actually called, to essentially go back to the shop each time, deposit your items, or not deposit, well, deposit things or really sell all your stuff off, because at a certain point you can't carry any things anymore, and it's just a very stupid inventory restriction. And you do use that money and you sell that stuff off to get, pretty good items. But yeah, it feels very weird playing this game, because you can tell it has the whole structure of an MMO, but it doesn't have access to the internet anymore, and so it's kind of just abandoned in a weird way. There's a shop, a healing center, your mission center, and your overall story thing, where the guy kind of repeats the same lines once you've done the first mission. It's kind of like, well, we need to investigate what happened to go find out. So there really is no in-depth story. PSO is very much a aesthetics driven game, a style driven game, a mood driven game to a certain extent. But it's very fun to kind of just sit there and grind and just be immersed in this world and imagine what could have been if it was an entire MMO, if it was a really large world. Leveling up feels good. I think the big thing about this game is the sound effects, and the sound design is really, really nice. It feels very futuristic. It feels very cool. And it's kind of a shame that it didn't really take off. I know there's another PSO today, or like a modern version, but I don't really know much about it. I should probably look into it, because it was a really great, well-designed game. But yeah, overall, would I recommend this game? It's kind of hard to do that. I mean, it's a very classic game. It feels very... there's something about Dreamcast games that feel very distinct, very ethereal in a way. Things like Shenmue, Sonic Adventure 1, the early fighting games. There's something very ethereal, futuristic, and Sega in general was very good at that aesthetic. Also, the load screens, you can interact with them, which are kind of fun, kind of cool. I don't know if I can recommend this, because it has all the signs and bells and whistles of a classic game, but it's not really fun to actually play. It's one of those weird things where you see a really great scene from an anime or a movie, and you find out, oh, that was like the highlight of that movie. Oh, okay. So would I recommend PSO? It's kind of hard. I would say probably not. Unless you're into the old school gimmicky stuff, I wouldn't say this is... Everything that has been done in this game has been done better in other games. And because it's a very mechanical game, you're just getting the feeling and the vibe out of it, which isn't, I guess, huge. But it is something. PSO is just one of those games, I guess, is all I can say about it. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Really neat game, really cool game, really weird. Not exactly great, but it's interesting, is what I would say. And with that, I'll see you guys later. Bye.